Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following all the news and updates on the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. I'm Daemon Hatfield, and I'm joined in person this week by Ryan McCaffrey, host of IGN's Xbox Podcast Unlocked.
Good to see you, Daemon.
You as well. And sitting in for Max this week, but also from Podcast Beyond, is Colin Stevens. Welcome to the show, Colin.
Great to be here.
And this week we got some big news on the Xbox side of things. After holding out for 2 years, Microsoft has announced they will be raising the price of their first-party games starting next year, 2023, to $70 for first-party Xbox Series X and S games, same price that PlayStation has been using for PS5 games since launch. So, Xbox is preparing to join other major games publishers in raising the prices of its first-party titles from $60 to $70. 2023, games like Starfield, Redfall, Forza Motorsport will all be launching at $70. But of course, Ryan, they're also still going to be available day one on Game Pass. So I have to imagine the amount of players out there that this is going to affect has to be rather small.
I couldn't agree more. And that's why I think there's two reasons why I don't think there's really been much of an uproar at all over this. Number one is that if you're watching this show right now, I would say there's a really high probability that you're a Game Pass subscriber.
Right.
So, it's the core audience, it's the enthusiasts that are following IGN, watching our stuff. And I mean, everybody at this table's got Game Pass, because why wouldn't you? It is a great service to have that's been well worth it so far, even with the relative lack of major blockbuster first-party titles. But certainly, secondly, is just the fact that Microsoft wasn't first out there with this. Sony went out, 2K went out, Ubisoft went out. So everyone's kind of already, I think, probably gotten any anger out about this issue. They've directed it at those companies. And while nobody's thrilled to pay $10 more for games, I just think the reality is, again, most serious Xbox players have Game Pass. And so they're really not going to feel this price increase.
Which is why the move is a little bit strange to me. Because I guess how beneficial can this be for Xbox, right? If it's a relatively small amount of players that it's going to affect.
Well, I think it is a meaningful number, but my point was that we the enthusiasts are all Game Pass subscribers.
Gotcha.
And sure, there's 25 million Game Pass subscribers, but Microsoft wants to have 100 million Xbox Series consoles out in the wild, and hopefully over the course of the generation they get there. So it's still going to impact your sort of more casual buyer that just buys a couple of games a year. They're going to be paying now $70 for these games, but the people that are really invested in the Xbox ecosystem, casual or hardcore, they're probably not going to be too affected by this.
That's an interesting notion, though, because we've heard recently that growth of Xbox Game Pass subscribers has slowed. So maybe this is actually a strategy to try to nudge some of those holdouts to jump over and join Game Pass.
I wouldn't disagree with you, although I would caution that the Game Pass price increase is almost certainly coming. It's just a question of, is it in 6 months? Is it in 12 months? Is it in 18 months? I mean, Phil Spencer has already warned us of this. I think we talked about it on this show when the subject of, that's right. He was asked in response to Sony increasing the hardware price of the PS5 in many regions, not ours. And Phil said, we don't have any plans to increase our price on hardware, but at some point there could come a time where hardware, software, services, we might need to do something. And they're now doing it on the software side. And I do think inevitably Game Pass is going to go up. But Microsoft, they need some blockbuster games to get on that service before they can justify doing that. So I think it's a minimum of 6 months out. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe next fall, maybe a year from now, we see Game Pass go up as well.
And by that point, you have Redfall, Starfield, probably
Forza,
Diablo 4.
Motorsport, Diablo 4, all the Activision stuff, sure. Yeah.
Okay, so Colin, PS5 games have been $70 since the launch of the PS5, correct? But it seems like maybe that was a little bit of a tougher pill to swallow, maybe just because even though PlayStation has revamped its PS Plus service, it doesn't have the benefit of first-party games launching day one into their service, right?
Yeah, exactly. And obviously because there's this sort of new paradigm where Xbox makes the majority of their revenue from Game Pass, I have to assume, as opposed to single box games.
A lot of it, for sure.
A lot of it. At the very least, it's a big chunk. And PlayStation, it's all from, this sort of big either download or physical box releases. And so they want to start at that $70 price point. They wanted to get that extra $10. And frankly, it had been a long time coming for it to be increased to $70. No one wants it to be increased to $70. Sure. But inflation, it's honestly surprised me that they waited that long. And I think, they just used the excuse of a new console generation to just be like, okay, it's getting very expensive to make games, and $60 isn't worth what it was at the beginning of the PS3 generation. So they bumped the price. It wasn't a very popular decision. And like you said, Ryan, 2 years later, Microsoft just saying it out of the blue, maybe one day of bad press and people are a little bit mad about it, but people have already kind of forgotten, frankly, that this is a news beat,
Well, even inflation aside, games have been $60 for 17 years now, since 2005 and the launch of 360.
Yeah, so. That was a pretty firm, intentional move on the entire industry's part. They all, they had that meeting of the heads of the 5 families, I guess, at that point, and said, all right, let's go to $60 here. Yeah. That fall, I'll always laugh. The fall of 2005, Activision specifically, I remember this so well covering it at OXM, shipped Gun, an excellent Western game from Neversoft. And whatever that year's Tony Hawk game was, I don't recall off the top of my head. They shipped in November of 2005, and the original Xbox version was $49.99. Yep. And the exact same game, but running at 1280 by 720, was $59.99. So it was that was a little bit of an awkward transition in terms of the look for them, but yeah, $60 became the norm, and yeah, it's compared to when we were kids, Daemon, and in the cartridge days. Yeah, we're still getting a deal, really. Again, I know nobody wants to pay more for games, but if you do look at the bigger picture here, I think you brought some evidence, I think, that it's been you go back to some of those Nintendo cartridge prices.
Yeah, even on Sega Genesis, I want to say it was Phantasy Star 4 or Shining Force 2 that was like $80 on the Sega Genesis, even more expensive than
$80 back
in 91.
I don't even know.
I remember Bionic Commando on the NES was like $55 and $1988. So
Conker's Bad Fur Day, I think, is a pretty historical example. On the N64, it was $69.99 and 96 was that, somewhere around there, maybe 97.
Yeah.
To my memory, it really wasn't until the PS2 Xbox generation that $50 was
standardized.
And you really did deviate from that unless you were a budget priced game. Mm-hmm. From then on, it was always 50 up until obviously they bumped it up to 60. But finally that sort of reined in the chaos a little bit. It wasn't so much I don't know if this game's going to be $30. I don't know if it's going to be $80,
and not to just be a defense force for these companies, but you do look games have gotten more expensive to make, but the production values have gone through the roof. But games are also bigger than ever too. So it's not like games have gotten shorter. They're really hard to make and the production value games. It's not like games are 5 hours of games are 50 plus hours. So at least you're getting price increase being what it is. You're not. I don't feel like anybody's getting shortchanged by these price increases. But again, at least on the Xbox side, the solution is just subscribe to Game Pass, and then you'll never worry about these $70 games until the price of Game Pass goes up. And then whenever that happens, we'll see what the price goes up to, and the market will decide if Game Pass is still worth whatever higher price Microsoft wants to charge for it in a year or whatever from now.
Yeah. Then the solution on the PlayStation side is just wafer sales.
Well, but those seem to happen all the time.
They happen constantly.
Yeah, constantly. So Xbox first-party games going $70 next year. They'll be joining many others in the industry. Ubisoft is going to start doing that as well. I think they've been holding out. I think Far Cry 6 was $60, but Skull and Bones launching in the spring. They've already announced that's going to be a $70 game.
Good luck with that.
Good luck with that. I mean, we'll see. Callisto Protocol, which just launched, is a $70 game. The Dead Space from EA, they've already announced, going to be $70 in January. Hogwarts Legacy will be a $70 game from Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
But then some of the Japanese publishers are still holding out. Capcom Resident Evil 4 Remake is already available for pre-order, $60 on next-gen platforms.
I do have a theory on that one.
What's that?
Because they are also releasing it on the PS4.
Right.
And so the PS4's price is still $60 per game.
Mm-hmm.
However, they've been doing these next-gen updates for Resident Evil 2 and 3 Remake and 7, and they were all free updates. So I think they were just sort of following their own precedent, frankly. Just like, okay, if we're going to do these free upgrades and someone buys a PS4 version, we don't want to complicate this if they want to upgrade to a PS5 version. Let's just make it all $60 and hunky-dory.
And kudos to them for that.
Exactly.
Very pragmatic of them. But Sega is another one. Their next Yakuza game, which is actually Ishin or Like a Dragon. Like a Dragon Ishin, they just dropped it in the Yakuza point. Point is, when that's out in the spring, that's still going to be $60 for them. So it's been a slow sort of sea change to the $70 price point. Colin, Ryan thinks a price hike for Game Pass is inevitable. Would you say the same for PlayStation Plus at some point?
I mean, all of these three tiers, they're relatively new, this three-tiered system.
Yeah, a few months
So they've already set the price recently, so I wouldn't expect them to change it unless they added more benefits, unless they happen
more
to
tiers.
add more tiers. Please no more tiers.
My favorite Ozzy Osbourne song.
Yeah. No, L'Oreal, no more tiers. I think because they have this three-tier system, it's new. Unless they were to add an extra benefit along the lines of including first-party games, which I do not expect them to do anytime soon, I don't think that they're going to bump the price.
That would drive so many subscribers. I'm sure they obviously have thought through that and have a good reason for why they feel like selling $70 games is going to make them more money than a service. But boy, it's they sure could goose their subscriber number if they did offer a one more tier that had first party day one games in it.
I can't even begin to imagine like what the production cost of like God of War Ragnarok was, just because like the production values are so high in that game. Someone at PlayStation has run the numbers saying this doesn't make sense to give away.
But you look like let's say Halo Infinite cost. Let's just say it cost $300 million to make because it was in development for a long time.
Sure.
Well, if your average monthly, you've got 25 million subscribers to Game Pass, and you've got some $10 subscribers at the base Game Pass tier, and then some $15 a month subscribers, maybe just, I don't know, say what, $12 is the average. You do the math, and it's like you've covered the budget for an entire expensive Halo Infinite pretty quickly.
Sure.
So again, should anyone listen to me on this? No, because I am not a business expert.
You should watch the show.
But it's because that's always been a thing, right? You see that in the gaming community a lot. It's like, oh, Game Pass, how can that be any good for developers? How can that, like, no, it's clearly working. Just like it worked for Netflix. Netflix and Netflix famously they were in debt for a long, they weren't making money for a long time, but you get to a point where you get out of that trough and you've got now tons of content, tons of subscribers, and you're off to the races. And that's exactly where we are with Game Pass now. I feel like they're out of that trough. The subscriber count, even if that's slowing, it's 25 million, and that's before they've shipped Starfield. That's before they've shipped Redfall. That's before they've shipped anything really of note in this entire generation, outside of Halo Infinite and Forza Horizon 5.
Yeah.
Both of which were cross-gen games. So anything specific to this generation hasn't even hit the service yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's it continues to fascinate me, the strategies of Sony and Microsoft and how they differ. And you just kind of, you can pick one, and ideally you do both, but there's the economics of the game industry have changed so much, even in the last 5 years. It's pretty wild.
And then there's Nintendo finding great success, just doing their own thing.
Who knows when they're coming out with their next system, but I guarantee you, even if it's not going to be nearly as powerful as PS5 and Xbox
70?
Series, which they won't be, they're going to go to 70. They're going to, I love Nintendo, but they know how to get money out of a game.
How many times have we each purchased Super Mario Brothers?
Yeah.
1,
Yeah.
3, a lot of times.
Yeah.
It's been many, many times.
It's true. I'd pay $70 for NES Remix 3. I'll pay for that. Okay, we've got the results from last week's poll. We were asking, did you score a next-gen console over Black Friday or Cyber Monday? And 73% of our viewers already had one. They weren't looking for it. So
Excellent. Glad to hear that.
That's encouraging numbers.
If we had done that poll exactly 1 year ago, maybe we did. I'll bet the numbers would have been quite a bit lower on that. So it's good to see people actually getting their hands on the consoles.
Yeah.
11% of respondents said they tried but failed. 7% got a PS5. 4% got an Xbox Series X. And 4% said they got both.
Nice.
Over Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So that's quite a score. Congratulations to all of you. We have a poll for you to vote on for next episode. What was your favorite announcement out of the Game Awards? There's just so many exciting announcements that it could have been. Make sure to vote for your pick at IGN.com, and we'll share the results with you next episode. And that will do it for this edition of Next Gen Console Watch. Thank you to both Ryan and Colin for joining me here in our LA studio. Thank you to everyone working behind the scenes to make this episode possible. My name is Daemon. We'll be back next week, 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. Eastern with more PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X news. We'll see you then.